Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning to our honored guest. Welcome to the last day of our webinar session of Higher Education Virtual Expo 2021. With me today on Sunday, 21st February 2021 is Mr. Ahmad Rezal from MEG Educational Services, presenting a topic on steps for visa application and other procedures to obtain entry into Malaysia. For any inquiries, you can type your questions in the chat provided and will be answered during the last 10 minutes of this session.
Okay, firstly, thank you so much, MOE Brunei, for the opportunity and for hosting such a wonderful virtual event in Brunei, allowing students to get a lot of information about higher education options. And it's great to be here on a Sunday morning to share with you a little bit about the visa processes, the steps about going into Malaysia. Allow me to just share my screen, and then we can get this short presentation on its way. Yes, as mentioned earlier, my name is Ahmad Rezal. I represent an organization called Education Malaysia Global Assist. We are the support partners for MEG Educational Services, a student placement agency in Brunei itself. So we do a lot of support work for students that actually want to come over to Malaysia. But MEG is our core partner in Brunei itself. And if any students who are interested to basically look for options in Malaysia, MEG would be the best person to go to. Okay, so let's move on with the presentation today. I'm here to talk to you about the SOPs for international students to actually enter Malaysia. Late last year in December, the Malaysian government did announce that it's opening up its borders from the 1st of January 2021 to international students to basically come back to Malaysia. Or if you're a new student, then you can now start your process to enter Malaysia itself. But things have changed. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 situation globally, a global pandemic, things has actually changed, and therefore there are new additional requirements for basically students to come into Malaysia. And therefore, my talk this morning is essentially to just share with you all these critical things that you need to know before you make a decision whether you should come back to Malaysia, or if you're already in the process and you've made that decision to come back to Malaysia. These are things that you should know before making your journey. Okay, now, first question would be who can travel to Malaysia? All right, so the SOP is pretty clear. SOP is straightforward. It just says all nationalities from anywhere in the world are allowed to enter to Malaysia. I'm just referring specifically to students. So any students from anywhere in the world are allowed to enter Malaysia, except students from United Kingdom. Okay, my team actually prepared a very long list. I'm not going to go through the entire list. So what you just need to remember is, unfortunately, if you're from the UK, then at this current point, there is still a travel restriction. But if you're from anywhere else, especially from you guys from Brunei, there's no issues for you to basically start your process to come to Malaysia. Then comes down to who can come into Malaysia in terms of what kind of students. So if you could see here on my slides, there are two types. One is new students and one is existing students. In my previous presentation, I also mentioned that there's another category called absolute new students. So what are all these categories? New students are students who have basically last year, you started some online options to study an online course in Malaysia. Okay, but you have never physically entered Malaysia as a student, right? But you've already started some online programs, so you are still considered a new student. Or you applied to study in Malaysia last year, but because of the pandemic, you decided not to come to Malaysia, but you have something called an EVAL, a electronic visa approval letter. So which means that you almost made that journey to Malaysia, but you didn't. And for whatever reason, for the whole of last year, you decided, hey, I'm going to take a break, and I'm only going to come into Malaysia when they officially open their borders. So then you're still considered a new student. The other group will be the existing students who probably already in Malaysia for 6 months, for 1 year, for 2 years, for 3 years, for whatever duration, which means you're already a student and you have a visa on your passport, a sticker on your passport that says you have a student visa. Then you are an existing student. So both of these categories, you are allowed to enter Malaysia now. And what is the absolutely new students? Absolutely new students is, for example, you graduated late last year, All right, and then this year you said, okay, I think this year I decided to to start my education journey, and therefore I think Malaysia is one of my destinations that I intend to go to. And so you are only now planning to start, which means you haven't got an offer letter, you haven't made a decision, and you're hunting for options. So you are the absolute new category. Now, for all these particular students, if you're selecting any Malaysian universities, it's also my duty to tell you that before making any application process to any university, please go to BDNAC to get their approval first before making a full application into any of the Malaysian universities. Okay, this is really very mandatory, and it's very important news. Okay, so apart from this, now we move forward. Will be the first question people tend to ask me would be, if I'm coming as a student, will I be allowed to bring my dependents, especially for masters or PhD students? Okay, the answer to that is no. At this current point, dependents are not allowed. So if you're just a student, you can only come. You can't bring your parents. You can't bring a sibling and so forth. You can only come on your own. So no dependent passes are being issued at this point by the Malaysian government. Okay, so we'll go now to this. Now, the first thing that you really need to understand, okay, you really need to understand, and this is basically because of the COVID-19 situation, is that quarantine is mandatory. Okay, so this is something of what we call the new norm, right? Everyone talks about the new norm, the new norm, the new norm. So sadly, the new norm, the process of the new norm, one thing that you need to bear in mind is that if you come to Malaysia, you will be subjected to quarantine. Now, there are two things to quarantine, whether you're going to be on a 7-day quarantine or on a 10-day quarantine. Okay, these will be determined by the immigration and the Ministry of Health officers at the checkpoint when you arrive to Malaysia itself. Okay, so you won't know in advance. Okay, but of course, as I go through the steps and what I'm going to share with you today, we can try to help you determine whether it's most likely going to be 7 days or it's definitely going to be 10 days for you. All right. Now, if you see here on my slides, 10 days is that if you did your tests, all right, and somehow those tests, the ministry officers felt that those tests were not acceptable, maybe because there's a duration, 72 hours, and you've missed that duration, or they felt that the tests maybe weren't that accurate for whatever reasons they deem so, then they will put you on a 10-day quarantine period. All right, but if they felt that, yeah, your test is valid, it's legit, it's credible, then they'll immediately tell you, hey, don't worry, just go for the 7-day quarantine itself. Now, these are just some of the things that I advise students to bring in. The one that I would really stress on would be personal medication. Okay, because you must imagine you're going to be in a quarantine room, you're going to be in a hotel room for the next 7 to 10 days. You're not allowed to see anybody. There will be no physical contact with anybody at all. So during the quarantine period, maybe you may develop an allergy, or you may be, allergic to certain type of medicines that's probably generally available at the quarantine center, because you have a specific condition. So I advise that you have your medication prepared if you're going to come for this quarantine journey. Okay, now then, as you know, the quarantine is not free. You have to pay for quarantine charges. Quarantine is part of a fee that you need to factor into your cost of education. Right? So if coming to Malaysia, you need to pay for it. So these are some of the costs. A day for a quarantine day will cost you 150 Malaysian ringgit. Okay, so depending on 7 or 10 days, you have to pay that amount. Now, if you look at my slide here, you will be wondering, Rizal, why is 7 days and it's still 1,500 here? Well, I just list this here is because regardless of whether you're going to be going for 10 days or 7 days, all right, before coming to Malaysia, you need to make all these payments in advance, all right? So you have to make the full payment of 10 days first, right? And should the ministry officers say, okay, we're going to give you only a 7-day quarantine instead of a 10, they will refund any excess. Okay, so remember that you have to pay for full first, and if there's any excess, the Malaysian government will refund the necessary over to you. And of course, there's an additional 2,600. This is for the quarantine operations. All right, so if you lump these two together, it's roughly about 4,100 Malaysian ringgit. But that doesn't stop there. You will also be subjected to some screening tests, okay? Because before they discharge you from the quarantine, they will also do another test. And in case that your test was invalid, all right, they have to do another test upon your arrival. So this is an additional 370 that you would need to pay in advance. So actually, this is the entire amount that you need to pay. Okay, 4470. This is the exact amount that you would need to pay. All right. I'll give you shortly some of the links on how to make those payments before you come to Malaysia. Now, I'm just going to talk briefly about an eval. Eval is like I said to you earlier on, is an electronic visa approval letter. This is one of the mandatory documents that you need, even pre-COVID-19, where regularly any students that come to over to Malaysia, you need to have an eval before you could actually fly to Malaysia. Now there are some additional documents to this. Okay, the additional documents to this is called a declaration of accommodation and a declaration of commencement of online classes. These are the two new documents. Prior to COVID-19, none of these documents, but post COVID-19, you have these two new documents. Now, what is the first declaration of accommodation? This is when you're applying to come over to Malaysia, you need to inform your university, and your university will inform the ministry on where you will be staying. Okay, this is very important because in case that we need to do any contact tracing, right, we need to inform you of certain things. We need to, notify you if there's something that's happened, then it will be easy for us to try to locate you. All right, so please treat this declaration of accommodation as a very, very serious document, because it will also help protect you, right? Because if the government doesn't know where you are and where you're staying, and should there be an emergency, we are unable to contact you, then you are putting your life at risk as well. So declaration of accommodation is important. And the second one is just declaration of commencement of online classes. Like I said earlier on my slides, maybe some of you started an online program last year. Okay, so it's just informing the ministry that, hey, actually, I already am part of the system. I already did an online program. Now I just want to come to Malaysia to do the physical bit of it. All right. Okay. Now, what are the pre-arrival process now? So this is where you need to do some legwork. The earlier documents that I mentioned to you, those two documents, all you need to do is just do a communication with your university. Just communicate with them, right? Just for example, if you are a Sunway student, Sunway University, so you just need to tell Sunway that, hey, I'm intending to come for perhaps one of your coming intakes, and this was roughly where I intend to stay. If you don't know, yeah, there's some students will ask, I don't know where to stay. Don't worry. My advice is just choose the university's accommodation first. Use it first for the first 3 to 6 months. And then after that, if you are more already comfortable in Malaysia, then only move out and find accommodation on your own itself. Okay. Now, these are some of the things that you need to do. Like I said, eval and travel authorization. Inform the university that you intend to come back to Malaysia. They will do the necessary process with EMGS, and there will be a document called travel authorization. So this is the first document, again, and a new document that has never existed, called travel authorization. This is you applying to EMGS to ask EMGS, hey, I want to come to Malaysia. Do you allow me to come to Malaysia? So this is one of the documents that you probably need. It can be done online. Just need to go to the EMGS website. It's here, and you'll get it from there. Okay. And then here you will see, once we've gotten the travel authorization, okay, we've gotten the travel authorization letter, then you will need to go to the nearest Malaysian mission. In the case of Bruneians, will be the Malaysian High Com, all right, and do two other things. One is to sign an LOU, a letter of undertaking, and also obtain a travel notice. Okay, so the travel notice is something different from your travel authorization. Travel authorization is just allowing you to travel, seeking permission to travel. Travel notice is by the Malaysian mission. The Malaysian mission will issue you out a travel notice for you to basically come over to Malaysia itself. So this is something that some legwork that you probably need to do. You probably need to go there, but nonetheless, like I said, you can engage the services of MEG, who will also support you with this process itself with the Malaysian mission. Yeah, this is just a glimpse of what the LOU would probably look like. Okay. Yeah, for Bruneians, you don't need the single entry visa. This is for other nationalities. But yeah, this is number 4 here will be the critical thing that you would need to do a COVID test 3 days before departure or arrival to Malaysia. Now it's 72 hours. All right, so you'd have to look at hours. I would rather look at hours because 3 days is sometimes arguable. All right, so let's just look at the 72 hours, which means within the window of 72 hours you should be in Malaysia. Of the time you took the test and the time you arrive in Malaysia, keep it within that 72 hours. Okay, so that's extremely important to note. And apart from that, remember I mentioned to you about the screening tests. and the payments for quarantine. So this is where you probably need to go. You could actually, the easiest is myeg.gov.my. Just go to this app and make all the prepayments in advance. Again, two people will definitely help you with this. One is the university that you're applying to, because they'll be very worried that you follow the process. Together with MEG, go to MEG and they will also have a checklist to guide you through the necessary process so that you don't make any mistakes. Okay, so again, this is a portal where you could basically make payment to come over to Malaysia. And last but not least, you probably need to download an app. Okay, the app on your mobile device, it's called My Sejahtera app. All right, this app, yeah, you could do it before you come, or you could do it when you arrive. But my suggestion is do it before you arrive to Malaysia. It's a contact or a tracking app. Okay, it's very important wherever you go in Malaysia now. Whether you are going to a restaurant, whether you're going to a shopping mall, whether you are just at the roadside, buying something from a stall, there is a QR code that you need to scan. Okay, it's meant for us to help to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So you need this app actually basically to just track all your movements. Again, it's meant to help you. Okay, in case that there was a recently reported case of COVID where you recently went, so the app will notify you, and then you can also do your own screening as well. So it's a very, very healthy thing to actually do when you come over to Malaysia. I've also, just for everyone's knowledge, some people did ask me what's the difference between test A and test B. So this is just a slight difference here. This one takes a little bit longer time to do, but the test results are a little bit more accurate versus the RTK results. But you probably will do two when you come over to Malaysia. As you can see here, RTK antibody cannot be used to validate COVID-19. Okay, so but this is just a quick glimpse of the difference of the two tests, okay, that you will be subjected to. So this is the test that you probably need to do prior to arrival to Malaysia. Okay, moving on. Now, once you've got all that sorted, and like I said, MEG together with the university says, okay, fine, time to fly over to Malaysia. You need to remember this very important thing, all right, because of your unique location. Okay, now you can only arrive in 2 points of destination, which is KLIA or KLIA 2. Right? Because you guys are in Brunei, right? So you'll be wondering, hey, can I just cross the border in Limbang, and go into Malaysia and start my education there? No, it's not possible. Okay, and I did speak to some of the universities in Sabah and Sarawak. They're currently not accepting international students yet. So if you're choosing those destinations, it's still an online option. But if you want to come to over the peninsula of Malaysia, then please only choose these two options. All right. Again, some of you will say, hey, maybe I could fly over to Singapore and then cross the straits over into Malaysia. No, you can't do that. All right. So please bear in mind it's either KIA or KLIA 2 only. And then once you've got your ticket sorted, then it will be the post arrival, which means once you arrive to Malaysia, what's happened next would be as I said just now, they will check your tests to see, the validity of it to determine whether it's 7 or 10 days. You will have the quarantine, and during the quarantine, if you're on a 7-day program, then on the 5th day they will test you, and if you're on the 8-day program, on a 10-day program, then on the 8th day they will test you. Okay, and once you have been cleared, you've been given a clean bill of health. They said fine, you are COVID free. They will give you something called a release order. Now, this release order is a very important document. I cannot stress enough how important this document is. This is to verify that you have already undergone the quarantine. Okay, so actually, when you want to check into your accommodation options as well, even the university will ask for this document. They say, hey, can I see your release order, right? Because the accommodation options also are very afraid, that you've not properly done your quarantine and all that. So this is a very important document. Should the university take this document for some level of processing, they need to process something, should they, then at least have a copy with it with you. All right, because if let's say you've been stopped by somebody and they ask you, okay, are you an international student? You say yes. Then they'll say, have you done the quarantine? And then if you said yes, they'll probably ask you for some proof to show, so you could show a copy first if the original is not with you. Apart from that, yeah, you can return to the institution. This will all be subject to the individual institutions. They have all their individual guidelines. Even on campus as well, and even while you are in Malaysia, you need to adhere to the current policies as well. We're currently on certain states, we're still under a movement control order. Certain states like Kuala Lumpur, states like Selangor, states like Johor, where the COVID cases are still a little bit high. So we are under a movement control order. So where you come here, you have to be like us, you have to adhere to all the relevant policies. Shops may close a little bit earlier. You may not be allowed to go out too late in the night and so forth. Okay, so these are just a very quick glimpse of what you need to mentally prepare and what you physically need to do before coming over to Malaysia itself. Okay, now let's go into some very quick FAQs here. I've got about 17 questions. I'll go through very quickly with them. 1, 2, 3 will be what is the final initial payment? I've already explained that's about 4,470. Must I pay the screen plays in advance? Yes, I repeat, you need to pay that in advance. Otherwise, you can't come into Malaysia. Will the money be refunded? So, okay, if you can see here, 1, 2, 3, yes, the money will be refunded should it not be utilized. Only the portions will be that's not utilized will be refunded. Now, fourth question is, if I've been vaccinated, do I still need to be quarantined? Yes. Yes. At this point of time, even though you're vaccinated, you need to undergo the quarantine. Can my parent come with me? No. As I mentioned to you, no dependents are allowed. Can we decide which hotel to stay? Unfortunately, no. That will be determined by the ministry officers. But so far, we've seen that most students go into 3 to 4 star hotels. Okay, very decent, very nice accommodation options itself. Um, what are the basis to decide between 10 to 7 days of quarantine? I've mentioned that earlier on. It all starts from you to decide how well you have done your tests and how legitimate those tests are. How do I buy food? Sorry, but there's a spelling error here. But how do I spell? How do I buy food during quarantine? Well, the quarantine already comes with food. Okay, so you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You have 3 meals a day. That's part of the 150 package. That's, so to speak, travel package that you're already paying for. But in between, let's say in between you're hungry or you want additional food supplements, you want something else that you could use Grab. There are a lot of, again, mobile applications that you could use in Malaysia. There's Food Panda, there's Grab, many, okay, many. So all you need to do is just download one of those apps, have a credit card that's hooked up to that app, and start ordering your food. The food can be delivered to your doorstep, okay, by the delivery people. Now, what is the next one will be what is the curfew to order, which means yes, there is a cutoff period. So currently, I think they will revise this, but currently it's 5:30. So any food delivery that comes after 5:30 will never be delivered to your quarantine room. Okay, so this one, I think later on, again, the university as well as MEG will give you more guidance on this, but I just want you to understand that there is a curfew for this. What should I pack for quarantine? I mentioned that just now. Medicine, very important. Number two, you may also pack some light snacks. If you're not comfortable with food first, or you're unsure of what are the 3 meals that the hotel will be giving me, or if you're a very fussy eater, then bring some food that you're comfortable with for the first 1 or 2 days to just test out, what kind of food that the hotels will be giving you. All right, and then make a decision whether you want to go all out with Grab food and all that. All right, but please bear in mind, if you don't take the food, it's not refunded. Okay, so don't come and say, hey, Rezal, you mentioned that, if unused items will be refunded. Yes, but food, no. If you don't take the food, it's not refunded. They will still give you the food one way or another. All right. Will I be able to buy a Malaysian SIM card? Yeah, sure, definitely. You can get a SIM card upon arrival at KLIA or KLIA2. If yeah, this is a very common question. Let's assume that 3 or 4 of you are coming together as a group of friends. No, you will not be able to quarantine together. Quarantine means self-isolation. So you'll be isolated on your own, okay? Even though your friend is in the next room, right? You are not allowed to leave your quarantine room. You're not allowed to leave. The minute you leave a quarantine room, many consequences will happen. First, they may even re-extend your quarantine, or they may also give you a punishment in terms of a penalty. You need to pay extra for breaking certain policies and rules. So when they tell you 7 days in that quarantine room, it's really 7 days. You need to be in that room only. You can't even go out. You can't even knock on your friend's door if you know that they are next door and say, hey, can I borrow something? No, that's definitely not possible. Now, it's a very good question. Is it really safe to be in Malaysia right now? Okay, as you can see, we at the start of the year we had an increase of COVID cases, and that's one of the reasons why we are in a movement control order at this point. But yeah, Alhamdulillah, we've been seeing the cases again declining now. It's in the 2000s. We hope, inshallah, that it will go down even further in the next coming weeks or so. But to answer this very general question, whether is it safe, I think it's more on what we can do. All right, regardless of whether you're coming to Malaysia, going to Singapore, or going to Australia, or going to anywhere in the world, all right, it all depends on us individually whether we are disciplined enough to follow SOPs. Things like social distancing, you can avoid going to crowded areas, avoid, washing your hands, wearing face masks. We have to be very diligent and disciplined about this. And this helps you protect yourself from the virus itself. Okay, so I believe that it is conducive at this point to basically coming to Malaysia, provided you follow the SOPs. Failing which, otherwise, the Malaysian government would not even allow international students to come in if they deem it's dangerous at this point. But like I said, remember, it's all on us. It's all on us to decide whether we're going to be, like I said, diligent and disciplined enough to follow the SOPs. Okay. Um, is there mostly online classes, and why can't I just do it from here? Yeah. Earlier this week, we received a notification by the ministry informing that by March, most universities would need to reopen their campus and allow students to come in. This was a policy for local students, and it applies to international students that are already in Malaysia. So this comes in line with the announcement that the government made, like I said, to allow international students to return into country. So what I see from here is that some universities, or I think most universities, will still allow the hybrid option, which means physical together with online. But I think moving down the road, should the KV courses continue to recede, which means continue to decline, I believe perhaps by mid-year, it would be again back to, so to speak, normal, where they would require international students to basically physically come back to Malaysia already. Okay. So yeah, you need to mentally prepare for this, unless of course there's something bad happens, which I hope it doesn't, and then we could revert back to online altogether again. But at this point in time, have the mental preparation. If you don't come in now, you probably need to come in maybe mid or the third quarter of 2021 itself. Yeah, I think this number 15, it applies with number 14. Why should I do an accommodation booking without when I know when I'm coming? I think I answered this. It's just for contact tracing. And are all programs available? What if practical is needed? Very important question. Here is basically yes. That's the one of the reasons why we are continue to advocate that international students should slowly start looking to prepare to come back to Malaysia, because the education experience itself goes beyond just being at a laptop or a computer and learning, right? It's a lot of some. I think if you're doing things like culinary arts, if you're doing things like engineering or even medical students, a lot of it is also a lot of practical exposure. So that's why those things cannot be substituted, unfortunately, on an online class. So have that mental preparation. Good news is that vaccines are being rolled out. We are also getting our vaccines here in Malaysia also very soon itself. So inshallah, everything should be better throughout 2021. So I'm not going to go too much on this. Just wanted to just add in that, yeah, we are now living in a new norm. We have to accept that the new norm is the new norm. And the new norm, like I said, first things first is always quarantine. Second thing is face masks. Third thing is SOP. So these are the things that we cannot do away with. And if you needed to know more about the Malaysian universities, there will be a fair that will be conducted also in March. More information, just go to yes2malaysia.my, and you can get the details on all the top universities that will be coming here and sort them out specifically with any information as well. So with that, I thank you. I didn't want to take too much of your Sunday morning, and I hope that my session was informative enough to guide you through the first basic steps if you're intending to come to Malaysia. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Rizal. So now it's time for our Q&A session. So we have a few questions here. So the
Sure.
first one, it's regarding about the graduation or any bar exams in Malaysia. So if the country is closing their border, what will be the procedure there?
For graduation, okay. If
Yes.
we're talking about graduation, at this point of time, a lot of universities are still not conducting any graduation ceremonies. Okay, so I think it's again, it's just being cautious. It's just being safe. Mass gatherings or public gatherings is still deemed as something risky. So I believe that most of this would still be put on hold. Okay, but nonetheless, you can do check with your respective universities. They will also give you guidance. They will give you maybe a preemptive date. They will tell you, I think it should probably happen in August, or I think it will happen maybe at the end of the year, or something like that. Yeah. So I think, yeah, it won't happen now, but it should happen as we get the cases down. It looks bright. It looks positive that it should happen somewhere in this year.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is about the PKPB, the Enhanced Movement Control Order in Malaysia. So what
Yes.
will happen if there's a foreign students there? So what will be the procedure or SOP for the foreign students?
Okay, yeah, very, very, very good question. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier in my slides. Once you have finished your quarantine period, all right, so then you are, so to speak, quite free to roam around Malaysia as any other Malaysians. All right, so there are many types of PKP and all that. All right, so it all depends on which state you are currently in. You need to check, because, like I said, in certain states in Malaysia there is a controlled movement order. In certain states there is a full movement control order. Right, so you really need to take care, and you need to have an understanding on, because their universities are all spread out across Malaysia, right? So firstly, that's the first thing that you need to know. And number two is you need to constantly be on some news channel. But if you're on social media and you just hook up to any of the news channels, you definitely would know whether you are in which state and what kind of movement control order that is. Now, so what happens if you are in a so-called movement control, a full, okay, PKB state, which I'm currently in Selangor? Actually, it's still okay. You as a student, you are still able to roam around. But like I said, just follow the SOPs. Things like have your My Sejahtera app with you, which means every
Mm.
time when you go into any store, scan. Start scanning the QR code. Every time when you go out, wear the face mask. But of course, overall, try not to go out so much during this period. Go out only when it's necessary. Don't go out and unnecessarily expose yourself to the elements. Let's put it this way. Okay, so you have to follow, but the specific guidelines on what you can or you can't do are always advertised very openly in all the news channels in Malaysia itself. They will tell you if you are in a MCO state, where you can go and where you can't go, what you could do, whether can you dine in with your entire family, or you can only dine in as 2 person, how many people can be in a car, whether it's 1 person, 2 person, or the entire capacity of the car you can fit in. So there are all these policies. I can't list them out now specifically to you because they are also very fluid. They keep on changing week after week itself. So my only best bet is listen to the news, number one, and number two, follow the SOPs, please. Follow the My Sejahtera app. Follow the wearing the waist mask, and also whatever necessary things that I have just mentioned earlier about social distancing and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
All right, so moving on to the next question.
sure.
This is regarding about the swabbing. Okay, so if they have actually done the quarantine period and done with all of the test kits, uh, however, something happened that needed for contact tracing, and then they are involved in this. So do they have to pay for the swab test again?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So
If you're in a quarantine center, let's assume, okay, for some unfortunate reason, after you see, remember I told you if you're on a 7 day plan, on the fifth day they will do a test, right? Because they need to test to see whether you are safe to be released, so to speak. And let's say unfortunately on the fifth day something happened, and your test came out positive. Okay, they will definitely do a second retest. All right, they will, on the seventh day. And if the retest is still positive, then they will discuss with you to see what will be the next course of action. Right. So then yes, whatever happens after that, you still would need to continue to make payments so long as you are in quarantine.
okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, so moving on for the next question. So this is regarding on the visa. If
Okay.
the application has some mistakes, accidentally there's a mistake which actually overlooked. So what will happen to all of the application, including the visa?
Oh, okay. You need to be quite specific here on what happened and what you mean, what went wrong. But there is many lines of checking actually, all right? Before you submit your even your visa documents, all right? Like I said, if you are using MEG, they will be very well versed in the documents. You know, they will definitely be your first frontline eyes and ears to check out whether your documents are, you know, you've done those document sets complete in accurately done and whether it's complete. And then from there, it will go to an agency called EMGS, who will do another round of vetting. And even prior to EMGS, the institution itself will do one more round of vetting. And then it goes to EMGS. EMGS will do the final round of vetting before it goes to the immigration for final processing of the visa. Now, should it happened from your first viewpoint and your first contact with your agency like MEG, they will already advise you to do rectification. And then if let's say it was missed and it goes to the university, university will also prompt you back. If at EMGS level, they will definitely also inform you in advance. Okay. So I think the best solution to this is just to get it right from the start. Look for experts that could help you with acquiring the necessary documents accurately and compiling it correctly. Okay, but should there be anything, just to try to understand your question, should there be any problem with the visa application process, it will be halted. Okay, but I cannot, because your questions was very general, I do not know what was the specific issue of it. But all I can say, it will be halted. And best is just to look back to your institution to find out what is the source of the problem. Sometimes, normally it would be things like, oh, because your validity of your passport is less than 18 months. So then the visa process stopped, right? So what you just really need to do is just go and renew your passport again and then resubmit a new passport. Or sometimes it could be because the passport photo that you presented, had an error in it. So they felt that no, you just need to, take a new photo. So that will delay the process a little bit, but you can do that rectification in terms of submitting a new set of documents. Okay, all right.
Right. So thank you very much, Mr. Ahmad Rezal. So
Yes.
anything that we can actually, for any foreign students to actually ask another questions. So where will they actually contact MEG for?
Yes. Yeah.
So, all right. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Ahmad Rizal, and thank you very much for everyone for attending the webinar session 2021 with us. We hope that it benefits all of you. And still stay tuned for our next session presented by LCB later on at 10 a.m. So see you then. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good luck and take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.